So I want to welcome all of you who might be joining us online today. We appreciate you taking time out of your life to join us for our worship service here at the Church of the Brethren in Garden City. We're in a series called Drift Happens. You have an outline in your bulletin for those who are here. Last week we explored the question, how did we get here? How in the world did I get to where I am? And we talked about the fact that drift happens, and it happens slowly, and it happens sometimes without us even knowing it. And then we finished up with, I think, some important teaching on gratitude and being grateful to God. Today I want to shift the thought to a common mindset today. Our young people probably would use this phrase more than our 70 or 80-year-olds in the church would. And that phrase is, you do you. You do you. In a lot of ways, that's really good advice. I want people to be comfortable in their own skin, to know who they are and have some confidence about that. And so in many ways, that is really good advice. But sometimes the tendency is to take it to an unhealthy place, where it becomes, I want what I want. I'm going to do me. I don't care who it hurts. I've got to be me. When we do that, when we get this mindset going, ultimately we set ourselves up for the only person that determines truth. Truth becomes relative when you have this mindset. What I think truth is may be different from what you think truth is, but that's okay because you don't matter. Only thing that matters is me. That's the unhealthy ways that it gets to. We become our own source of truth. You see, ourself, and I have it in great big red letters in my manuscript, you see, ourself has become the new God. I become my own God. Society says, be true to your heart. Because after all, the heart wants what the heart wants. That's not always good advice to follow your heart. My heart wants a 12-ounce ribeye every day. My cholesterol doctor says a 12-ounce ribeye is not necessarily a good thing, Bob. But the heart says, I want it, I'll take it. The heart says, it's okay. I can go have that affair, or it's okay, I can cheat on this or cheat on that. Nobody will look, nobody's knowing, I can do what I want. But here's what Jeremiah says about the heart. Jeremiah 17:9. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it? That's what the heart is. It's deceitful. Following the emotions of the heart may be the single greatest cause of drift. Let me say that again. Following the emotions of the heart may be the single greatest cause of drift. You see, when we talk about the good life now, the good life is described as having an abundance of stuff. In fact, we have so much stuff, we have to get storage lockers to hold the rest of our stuff. And we have to build a carport because we can't put our car in the garage because we got so much stuff. But that's the good life. But I think God thinks the good life is more about being a good person. You need to know that the strongest desires are not always the deepest desires. Let me say that again. You need to know that our strongest desires are not always our deepest desires. Our strongest desires are for more. But our deepest desires, they keep us anchored to God. It is the deepest desires that satisfy my soul. I can't tell you the number of people, and I know Vaughn would share this statement as well, the number of people that I deal with who are very well off, who are absolutely empty inside. They can pay for you to go on a trip and not think a thing about it, but inside they are empty. It is the deepest desires that satisfy my soul. So I want to start today by asking a question. Who is the God of your life? Who is the God of your life? Is it flesh or is it spirit? I love the 5th chapter of Galatians. My guys on Thursday morning, we have a Bible study, and we're studying the book of Galatians. We're in chapter 4. We'll be in 5 pretty soon. But when Paul wrote the book of Galatians, it's the very first book that he ever wrote. Historians say that. And there's this big battle about the law and about the Spirit, about keeping the 10 Commandments or living in grace. And in the 5th chapter, he talks about freedom. And listen to what he says. I want to read verses 13 and 14. I'm going to read 2 or 3 sections and just a few words in between. Here's what he says in verses 13 and 14. For you were called to freedom, brothers. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. For the whole law is fulfilled in one word: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. When we love our neighbor as Christ wants us to love, it's in absolute opposition to the desires of the flesh. So you have to ask yourself, who is the God of your life? Is it the flesh? Is it the flesh or is it God? Trust me, the world is saying it's okay for you to do whatever you want. Nobody's looking. You can steal from the company. Nobody will ever know. The IRS doesn't check your tax form that closely, and the government won't miss it at all. Go ahead. You deserve it. Take whatever you want. That's what the world says. But the Spirit says, love one another and serve one another. You see the battle? You see the battle between the flesh and the Spirit? When I begin to love people as Christ wants me to love them and serve them as Christ wants me to serve them, then the flesh and my ego and all that goes with it, the sinful desires, they get pushed back. All right, let's move down just a couple of verses, 16 and 17. Same chapter. But I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the desires of the flesh are against the Spirit, and the desires of the Spirit are against the flesh. For these are opposed to each other, to keep you from doing the things you want to do. We're told to walk by the Spirit, not by the flesh. I challenge you, I ask myself, we need to be careful. We need to be careful of those deals that sound too good to be true. They may be shady. And you may end up in places you may not want to be, with bracelets that go around your hands like this. Okay? We see it all the time. People doing this deal and that deal, and now they're going to prison for it. Finally, in the 5th chapter, I love the 5th chapter. I want to read verses 22 to 24. You probably all have heard 22 and 23, but I want to add 24 into it. So here's what he says, finally. He says, but the fruit of we have this battle in the 5th chapter, as you already have guessed, between the flesh and the spirit, between the flesh and the spirit. So how do I know that you and I have the Spirit? I know it because of the fruit that you produce. If I'm not producing any fruit, I need to question whether I'm letting the Spirit lead my life. So here's what he said the fruit of the Spirit is. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. And those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. When I live in the Spirit, the flesh is crucified. So are you letting your feelings and your impulses guide your life? When the flesh takes over, I say unkind words. The other day I was visiting with a church member and I was talking about this concept of the flesh taking over. When it takes over, I might say, you know how godly I am, I might say snarky words to my wife. And this church member, that I don't want you to know who it is, said, well, when Vaughn gets snarky with me, I get snarky right back at him. By the way, that is a direct quote from Connie. And we had a good laugh. And I told her I'm going to talk about that in my sermon today. It's the flesh. We don't need to say that. I was talking to my wife about, are you going to say snarky words to me? No, dear. But we all have said unkind things. We all have. When the flesh takes over, I post negative posts on Facebook when otherwise I would just let it go. When the flesh takes over, I get more excited about what's on TV than I do what the book of Romans might teach me. Case in point, I got all excited this week. It doesn't take a lot to excite me. Obviously, you're going to find that out. I was in my office and I went, oh. And Karen said, what's going on? I said, I'm really excited. And that is my exact words. I'm really excited. She said, what are you so excited about? I said, I just read online that Matlock is coming back on TV. Did I not say that, Karen? I did. I love Matlock. I even like the old Matlock. Now, they said, well, Andy Griffith's in the grave. It's going to be a lady. His daughter's going to play the role. But I got excited about it. Did I get excited about studying the book of Romans? Or no. We get excited. I know you're excited. Some of you are excited about some sort of game that's going to come on TV about 5:30. Yeah. If you're not excited about the game, you're excited about the commercials. Okay? By the way, those commercials are dealing with the flesh most of the time. You get my point. When I deny the deepest desires of my soul, it always leads to drift. Hence, you have to decide who is leading your life, the flesh or the spirit. Number 2, what are you hungry for? So if you have a Bible, I want you to turn to Matthew 4. We're going to spend most of the next 45 minutes in my sermon. It won't be 45 minutes. In the Gospel of Matthew, very first gospel, first book of the New Testament, chapter 4. So I want you to get the picture. Jesus has just been baptized by his brother, his cousin, John the Baptist. who I believe was the first original hippie. He had this cloth around him, and he ate wild locust and honey. Now, I want to tell you, if you see a jar of honey in our church potluck today, make sure there's no locust right next to it, okay? I'm sure there's not. But I want you to get this picture. He's been baptized. He comes out of the water. And what does the voice from heaven say? What does it say? Behold, this is my Son, in whom I am well pleased. So he has the approval of God. He's on the mountaintop coming out of baptism. And immediately he goes to the desert, to the wilderness. So it's not on the screen, and I didn't ask Abby to put it on the screen. I'm just going to read for you parts of the 4th chapter, just so you get the picture. That Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. Remember that phrase. And after fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. And the tempter said to him, if you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread. But he answered, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes out of the mouth of God. Then the devil took him to the holy city and set him on the pinnacle of the temple and said to him, if you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command the angels concerning you. And on their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone. Jesus said to them again, again it is written, you shall not put the Lord your God to the test. Again the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all of the kingdoms of the world and said to him, all these I will give you if you will fall down and worship me. Then Jesus said to him, be gone, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him alone shall you serve. Now, first question I asked is, are you hungry? The first thing Satan did while Jesus is in the wilderness is tempt him in the area that often hits us the most, our stomachs. He says, are you hungry, Jesus? You know, if you just work with me, we can take all of these stones that are out here in this desert and we can make them bread. And you know, Jesus, I know that you're going to be the kind of guy who wants to help people who are hungry. So, you know, there's enough stones out here, Jesus. We can do a lot with that. We can feed an awful lot of people. You need to understand, Jesus did not fall for it. Jesus realized that he was designed with a deep desire to be connected to God. And we are designed with high character in mind to do works for God. Now, I've done a lot of funerals. In the last 3 years, over 60 funerals. Obviously not all members of this church. And at a funeral, you always talk about the person's character. You talk about the good things of them. You never say that they're flawless, because they're not. They're not perfect. Often I will tell people, they were never perfect. I love to joke. I probably joke more than I should. My wife tells me I probably do that a bit more than I should. But I don't believe that jokes are a part of a funeral. I use a lot of humor when I'm telling stories about people, but those are the things they tell me. I've only told one joke, and I've told it twice in 2 different funerals, because either the person themselves asked me to tell the joke or the family asked me to tell the joke. So I will tell you the story. So this guy moves his business from one place to another. He gets a beautiful bouquet of flowers. And in the bouquet of flowers is a card, and the card says, with deepest sympathy. And he calls the florist up, and he's reaming the florist out. He says, you sent me with deepest sympathy. And he's going on, and finally the florist calms him down. He said, you think you are angry. He said, how do you think that family feels? They're burying their loved one, and their card says, good luck in your new location. Now, here's the reason I've told that joke twice. Because a sweet lady named Muriel in Florida wanted me to tell that because it was her favorite joke. And then I said at her funeral, today, Muriel is in a new location. And they made the connection. Okay? But the one thing about funerals, we do talk about good things. We want to celebrate their life. We do want to celebrate their life. But we need to deny the fleshly things. Some people have said, to your own self be true is pretty wise advice. I want to tell you that may be the worst advice possible. To your own self be true might be some of the worst advice you could give, because it leads us to the flesh. So here is Jesus, 33 years, he had to battle with the flesh. Like us, he got tired and got worn out. Like us, he wept. Like us, he got hungry. Like us, he got upset when people were criticizing him. And I'm certain he was frustrated by those who just did not get him. But while he was, and you need to understand this, that we brethren, this is what we believe. We believe he was fully man, but while he was fully man, he was fully God. He wasn't at one time God and one time man. He's fully man and fully God. Hebrews 4:15 says, for we do not have a high priest who is unable, talking about Jesus Christ, who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. He experienced the same stuff you and I face every day. He was tempted just as you and I are tempted, but he did not sin. He remained anchored to God, who holds us all together. If we have one shot in life to win the battle with the flesh, it's going to happen because we are anchored to God. As we're reading this passage in Matthew 4, he's hungry. I don't know if you've ever gone on a fast. I went on a 40-hour fast one time. And I'm telling you what, I got so sick and tired of food commercials and restaurant commercials on the TV. And I called one of the guys up that was doing the fast. Our youth group, we were in Australia. Our youth group and some of the church leaders were doing this 40-hour fast. And I called them, are you watching those commercials? I'm going, yeah, I am. Jesus was hungry, and Satan appeals to the flesh. But Jesus refuses to do it. Basically, he says, in God's timing, I'll get fed. Jesus says, I'm not the bread Messiah. I'm not the economic this Savior of the world. He says there's something deeper that satisfies a man than just food alone. And we find it in verse 4. He said, but here's his answer. It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. All right, number 3. Our time is fleeting. Here's some important things to know about temptation. Here's some more important things to know about temptation. Temptation is a universal problem. Everyone is tempted. 1 Corinthians 10, 12 to 13, here's what it says. Therefore, Therefore, let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed lest he fall. No temptation has overcome you that is not common to man. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability, but with the temptation he will also provide the way of escape, that's Jesus Christ, that you may be able to endure. Everyone is going to be tempted. If you do not believe that you are ever going to be tempted, you are a fool. And I'm sorry for those bold words, but you're kidding yourself. We need to be honest with ourselves and with God. Last week I talked about a fearless moral inventory that we taught in Celebrate Recovery. If you've ever been in recovery, that most difficult step is doing that inventory of what's in our life that's causing us to do the things we do. Is it pride? Is it stuff? Is it envy? Is it lying? Is it resentment? I love the one about lying, you know. James Garner, the famous actor, they used to ask him what his greatest weakness was. He said his honesty. He said, what's your greatest strength? My greatest strength is my honesty. Honesty. Asked him what his greatest weakness was. He said, lying about my honesty. We can identify with that. It's just a little white lie. We get resentment. We get unforgiveness. The list goes on. We need to identify what is standing in the way between us and God. All right, B. Not only is temptation universal, temptation is relentless in pursuing you. I want to tell you, Satan was relentless with Jesus. If you think he just came to him those 3 times, I think we're misunderstanding the scripture. In Luke's account, in Luke 4, verse 13, listen to this. And when the devil had ended every temptation, he departed from him until an opportune time. So when's the opportune time? The very next day. The very next day in our life. If Satan is tempting you today, I'm going to tell you tomorrow he's going to be tempting you too. Our battle for our soul is not a one-day tug of war. It's a daily battle. Every day. Why do you think Jesus taught in the wonderful Lord's Prayer, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil? Because he knew the battle was a daily battle. Every day you need to be asking God to lead you away from temptation. All right, C. Temptation often comes with cheap shots. Satan says, come on, Jesus. Let's go over here to the holy city, and you see that spire on the top of that big old temple there? He said, you know, you may be on the top of the world right now, and some of us, spiritually, things are going very well in our life. Economically, things are going very well. Everything seems to be going really well. I want to tell you, you are not immune from temptation. Satan says, let's go up there. You can throw yourself off and don't worry about it. Your angels will catch you. Here are 6 fatal words. I think it's in your outline. This could never happen to me. We fool ourselves. We fool ourselves. I want to read 1 Corinthians 12, the passage we just had, but I want to read it in the Message translation. Listen to these words. Just knocks our socks off. Don't be so naive and self-confident. You're not exempt. You could fall flat on your face as easily as anyone else. Forget about self-confidence. It's useless. Cultivate God confidence. No test or temptation that comes your way is beyond the course of what others have had to face. All you need to remember is that God will never let you down. He'll never let you be pushed past your limit. He'll always be there to help you come through it. But sometimes it's not when we're at our highest level. Sometimes it's when we're at our most vulnerable level. I want you to know, I don't know how he does it, but Satan knows when you're down. And he knows what your hot buttons are. And he's going to push those buttons. He's going to take your weak spots and he's going to magnify them. That's why inner character is so important. That's why it's crucial to be anchored to God. So Satan says to him, Jesus, well, it may not be food that you need, but you know what? Let's go over. I know I mentioned about the spire in the temple, and he tells him to jump off of it. You can have it all. You can have the whole world. Those are the last two temptations. You can have it all. One, you can jump. Got you taken care of. Look out there, all the kingdoms are yours. Here's what he says in Matthew 10. Then Jesus said to him, Begone, Satan, for it is written, You shall worship the Lord your God, and him alone shall you serve. But Satan is great at spinning things. Can you hear the conversation in the desert? Come on, Jesus. You just need me to promote you better. You could be a superstar. Did you know, Jesus? You could be a superstar. You could do spectacular things. So let's jump off that spire, and you know what? That video will go viral. Have we convinced ourselves sometimes that what we're doing is going to go viral? You certainly will make SportsCenter top 10 for the week. Don't go the way of the cross. My gosh, why would you go that way? You're going to die. There'll be pain. There'll be rejection. Why don't you play to the crowd? That's what Satan tells us every day. Everybody else is doing it. Let's be like everybody else. Let's play to the crowd. You see, Jesus, if you just listen to me, you will become epic. Forget your father. You do you. I can get your name up in lights. And again, Jesus says to him in verse 7, Again it is written, You shall not put the Lord your God to the test. I'm not going to test my Father and see if he will swoop down and save me and get me more likes on Facebook, or have me be the most popular kid in the class, or get the promotion that I so deserve. You know what? I'm already accepted and loved by the only person that matters, and that's God. His approval is all that matters to me. I believe Jesus walked out of that encounter with Satan in the wilderness more confident than ever and more resolved than ever. Aren't you glad he did not cave in to temptation? He didn't listen to the flesh, and neither should we. Jesus recognized the lies that Satan throws at us because he had a deep relationship with God. That's what will keep you from drifting, the relationship with God. Jesus says to Satan, and we need to say it to Satan every single day, if you do not think that there's an effort to promote Satan, you need to go watch some of the videos of last week's Grammy show on national TV. It's disgusting. We need to say to Satan, you are a liar. And your only agenda is to steal and rob. And then here's our conclusion, very simple. Instead of you, do you. Let God transform you to be the best version of you that you can be. That's what we need to be, transformed. So we're going to sing a closing song today. It's called Waymaker. And Adam, are we ready to put